and thanks for joining us for this edition of Northwest News Week. I'm your host, Mitchell Ringos. We start with the staffing crisis as it continues to grip hospitals across the Northwest, but so far this summer, EMR have remained open after some closures back in spring. This despite the fact that ER patient volumes are on the rise. In Red Lake, there's been a 25% increase over last year. Kurt Black has the details on the creativity and hard work that has so far kept the doors open.
A month ago, Margaret Kochner, Memorial Hospital CEO Sue LeBeau, said she wasn't sure how she'd be able to keep the emergency department open in the face of serious staffing shortages. Since then, the ER visits have increased, but the doors haven't closed. LeBeau says it has taken creativity and plenty of hard work, with doctors in some cases working 36-hour shifts.
It was really a lot of pulling together, a lot of stretching, and not easy to do. We achieved it. Not sustainable, though. This is not something that they'll be able to do day in, day out, month in, month out.
LeBeau says primary care has suffered, with local doctors reducing their clinic hours in order to staff the ER. And she says that's happening across the region.
We're decimating primary care to protect emergency services, but in the long term, we're going to create more challenges in emergency services because we are removing access to preventive care and to early care for patients.
LeBeau believes that a lack of access to primary care, in part due to COVID, is already contributing to the increase in ER visits.
And I think it may be an accumulation of things that had been ignored during early COVID that now are more severe and calling for attention. Mental health and addictions is one of those examples.
LeBeau credits the collaboration between the region's hospitals, agencies, and doctors for keeping the ER running so far.
Nothing happens in isolation, even if we are in isolated regions. We know that we depend on each other, and so there's that sense of we'll try as best we can to pull through things together.
Looking forward, LeBeau says there will only be 2 physicians in Red Lake for much of August, and overnight ER closures are a possibility later in the month, adding she appreciates the public's patience and understanding in the face of longer wait times. Kurt Black, TBT News.
What started out as a case of road rage on Highway 17 near Nipigon on July 29th has now turned into a major drug bust for the OPP. It all started when a passenger vehicle rammed a motorcycle and pushed it off the road. The vehicle failed to stop for the collision and sped off at more than 180 kilometers an hour. Police later located the vehicle stuck on Camp 81 Road, where they found more than $100,000 worth of fentanyl, cocaine, crystal meth, and other drugs, along with cell phones, a combat knife, and a baton. A 34-year-old man from Victoria, BC, has been charged with 9 offenses, including public mischief, trafficking, and weapons charges. A 21-year-old Victoria woman also faces 7 similar charges. A Fort Frances man is dead following a boating accident on Rainy Lake on July 29th. OPP says 65-year-old Brian Craig Sanders was fatally injured after 2 personal watercrafts collided around 3:30 that afternoon. First responders came from the sheriff's office in Kukutchin County, Minnesota, as OPP scrambled to launch their boat. Sanders was taken to the medical center in International Falls, where he was pronounced deceased a short time later. An investigation is underway with a post-mortem scheduled for a later date. The Mattawa Chiefs Council is making a strong statement of autonomy. During last week's AGM, the council passed several resolutions formally rejecting processes they say will encroach on the Mattawa homelands and resolving to develop a First Nation-driven mining process. Lee Noonan has more.
Representatives of the 9 Mattawa First Nations gathered in Webequie First Nation for the first in-person AGM since the pandemic. They voted to reject a trio of third-party processes, saying the organizations must respect proper protocols and the autonomy of communities. Martin Falls First Nation Chief Bruce Atchinipaneshkam explains.
Governments have to talk to us when it comes to development on our lands, first and foremost, rather than any other organization that says they represent us.
The rejected processes include a proposed treaty relationship discussion between Anishinaabe Nation and Canada, a federal benefit sharing framework process, and economic development and prosperity tables proposed by Chiefs of Ontario and the Assembly of First Nations. None of those organizations were able to provide comment before broadcast.
While we're part of NAN and Chiefs of Ontario, those are our organizations. But when it comes to the land and the land issues, the government should speak with the treaty rights holders, the signers of the treaty, and that's the First Nations.
The council also voted to work with NAN and Chiefs of Ontario to develop a First Nations-driven approach to mining development in the province. Achni Paneshkam says he ultimately wants to see a self-government agreement akin to the one established in eastern James Bay.
First and foremost, we're asserting our jurisdiction on our lands, much like the First Nations did in Quebec. With the large projects that happened, the hydroelectric projects.
Previously, Matawa communities had been negotiating mining development in the Ring of Fire through a regional framework agreement, but that was dissolved by the Ford government early in their first term. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
A proposed palladium mine in Marathon has reached the next step of development with the release of an executive summary from the Impact Agency of Canada. The report is based off the input provided by the mine's proponent Generation PGM, residents and environmentalists earlier this year. But as Riley McManus reports, the mayor of the community that would benefit the most from the project is confused by the perceived impact the mine could have on an animal species that he says doesn't reside in the immediate area.
Some of the findings of an executive summary conducted as part of the consultation process for a proposed palladium mine in Marathon has the community's mayor, Rick Dumas, scratching his head, specifically when it comes to the topic of caribou.
I've been living in Marathon all my life. I grew up in Marathon, Heron Bay, and I had a camp in the woods, and I've been in the woods fishing, hunting with friends, and spent a lot of time in the woods. I've seen every animal that is present in Northwestern Ontario many, many times over. I have never in my entire life seen a caribou.
The report states the project sits within the Lake Superior coastal range for boreal woodland caribou, a 10-kilometer wide space that runs along the north shore of the lake. Dumas acknowledges the existence of offshore caribou herds on 2 islands in the region, including the Slate Islands near Terrace Bay. The footprint of the mine sits within the boundaries of the town of Marathon near its airport.
Prove to me that there's caribou in my backyard that are going to be impacted by the development of the mine, and I will definitely support that. I have yet to date seen the proof of that.
Caribou and their existence on the mainland has been a controversial topic in recent years. In 2019, several North Shore and Greenstone communities rallied against a proposal by the province that would have effectively shut the area down to development to support the caribou, which are not fond of humans and their activities. Information gathered by Gen PGM shows the population has declined over the last decade, as well as there being no evidence of the animals being within the site study area, an observation Dumas agrees with. He notes there are several other aspects that the report did say. Certain elements of the mine, should it go ahead, would not have a negative impact upon the environment or residents. The municipality has made it no secret that it is in support of the mining sector in the area, with the nearby Barrick-Hemlo mine acting as an industrial beacon in the area. And a new mine, Dumas says, would bolster the economic future of the community.
The impact for Maryland is going to be great. The impact is going to be great for the region. And the benefits that come with economics, as we all know, is the continuation of the services provided. I've seen it too many times in my 30 years as a member of council that when you have a town that loses their industry, it becomes very difficult to maintain the services.
The executive summary has now been given to the provincial and federal environment ministers, who Dumas hopes will give their approval of the project within a timely manner. Riley McManus, TBT News.
A Kenora man wanted in connection to a murder last month in Dryden has been arrested in Winnipeg. 39-year-old Wayne Gaynor Kijik was arrested on Sunday and charged with second-degree murder in connection with the July 13th death of 28-year-old David Sinclair, who's also from Kenora. 2 people have now been arrested in connection to the crime. The other is a 22-year-old woman from Winnipeg. Thunder Bay's brand new MPPs are preparing to get to work at Queen's Park. The legislature convenes on Monday with the Ford government's speech from the throne a day later. It'll be a brand new experience for a new PC member, Kevin Holland, and the NDP's Lise Vouchois. And while they both know it, they've been extremely busy in their respective ridings since the election, they're happy to finally take their seat in the legislature.
Last week, I was down in Toronto for the week learning legislative procedures, meeting with my staff and colleagues at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, of which I'm parliamentary assistant to. So this week, it's continuing on meeting with stakeholders in our community, different interest groups, to start moving forward some of the files that I wanted to address.
I'm excited. It's definitely a new adventure for me. I also feel, I do feel the weight of the responsibility. And I'm ready to carry that responsibility, but I'm aware of how important the work is. Working together with colleagues, getting into the House, being part of debates, that's, it's definitely exciting, heady stuff.
And when we come back, Greenstone enters a major push to get projects completed by the end of the council term. Welcome back. Now it's a race to the finish in Greenstone to start or complete infrastructure projects in the municipality as the current term on council winds down. However, despite the hustle, the community's mayor says some of those projects are still a ways away from completion. Adam Riley has the details.
Mayor Renaud Beaulieu, who is not running for the top spot on council again this fall, says there are more than 80 projects in various states of completion, including upgrades to the roof of the Long Lac Sportsplex, improvement and expansion of sewage treatment in Geraldton to add capacity for the new mine currently in construction, and a $2 million filter upgrade for Long Lac's water treatment plant. Beaulieu notes projects like that now and in the future will be an eye-opener for anyone who enters municipal politics.
That's been a project that's been going on for years. We're waiting for funding. There's funding that has to come in, but that's a $2 million project. I mean, that goes towards the cost of our water and sewer. We're getting grants, but those are also projects that our Public Works Department is all on top of that to make sure that the tendering comes out properly, the right wording is done. There is so much to the details today.
One of the big projects Beaulieu admits will not be done in time by the end of term is the creation of a new waste disposal site for the overall community. Greenstone is made up of several communities that prior to amalgamation 20 years ago were responsible for their own landfills. Late last year, the Geraldton landfill was closed and any waste destined for that site has now been redirected to Longlac, which as a result has shortened that facility's lifespan. According to Beaulieu, discussions have been ongoing for 4 years on the new mega dump with a focus on transparency for all.
And we're talking millions of dollars that have to be spent. We have all our Aboriginal communities around the area involved with us in these meetings. We've got the environment people. We've got everybody involved in the process. So before a decision is made, it is unbelievable. It's a little bit like the mine. 12 years down the road, the mine is here. Well, that new mega dump that we're talking about, or a new waste disposal site we're talking about, it could be 10 years.
Beaulieu is hopeful more public meetings on the new landfill site will take place this month. Adam Riley, TBT News.
The Transportation Safety Board has released some damning findings regarding the 2019 crash of a North Star Air DC-3 aircraft near Sachiko Lake. The cargo plane crashed after several attempted landings in cloudy conditions. The TSB said North Star's pilots had a, quote, distorted perception of risk and a results-oriented subculture that contributed to the crash. Nobody was injured in the incident. In a statement, North Star Air says it's taken actions to improve procedures for the operation of that type of aircraft and has also made personal changes to improve safety and oversight. And as the healthcare crisis makes headlines across the province, Thunder Bay Health Coalition is also calling on the Ford government to increase healthcare spending and hire more nurses. Nurses here, like many in the province, are struggling to keep up with their workload, leading some to consider leaving the field. That's according to Health Coalition co-chair Jules Tupker. He says while the wage gap is a huge factor, the biggest problem is working conditions and patient load.
People are not going into the nursing field because they're hearing stories about how brutal it is, and they're saying, I don't want to go there. You can give me $500 an hour, I don't care. I'm not going there because I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do.
Tupker says the issue leads directly to the violence faced by nurses as patients get angry with delays while nurses are occupied caring for others. The district's top doctor says monkeypox vaccines are expected to arrive in the city in the coming days. There are still no confirmed cases in our area, but with the disease spreading in other parts of the province, Dr. Janet DeMille hopes to start getting shots in the arms of those at high risk next week. Vasilios Bellos has more.
While the Thunder Bay District Health Unit has no confirmed monkeypox cases, there is some spread within the province that's concerning health officials. Currently, Ontario has had over 400 confirmed cases of the virus, and while the majority are in Toronto, health units across the province and country are preparing to receive vaccines. As local medical officer of health Dr. Janet DeMille explains, shots could be administered in Thunder Bay sooner rather than later.
I'm hoping within days we'll have the vaccine, and then any further guidance from the ministry with the use. And I've challenged my team to start administering it next week if we're able. So if everything works out. So that's the time, that's sort of the ideal timing.
Once the district receives monkeypox vaccines, they will initially be available to high-risk groups. Dr. DeMille is saying the exact guidelines are determined by the Ministry of Health. At this point, almost all infections, around 98%, are in adult men who have sex with other men. Dr. DeMille also notes that Ontario has been vigilant in tracking cases and preventing spread so far, which is why the number of infections is still relatively low. Despite this, she stresses the district must remain vigilant as the issue is getting out of control in places such as the United States.
We know that if it's out of, not well controlled in other areas, and I always look at Minnesota, for example, as well as other areas around here, it is a bit concerning about where this could go, but certainly I think we're in a reasonably good situation right now, and we will adjust accordingly going forward.
Dr. DeMille says once the health unit receives monkeypox vaccines, they will be more than capable of rolling them out to high-risk groups. The shot will then open up for others as the district receives more vaccines and has a better understanding of how the virus spreads. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
Coming up after the break, engines roar, rubber burns, and crowds cheer as Dragfest returns to Terrace Bay. Welcome back. Now, if you like fast cars, roaring engines, and beautiful skies, then Terrace Bay was the place to be for the 2022 Terrace Bay Drag Fest, which saw speedsters from across the region and beyond descend upon the town's former airport turned drag strip. Adam Riley has more.
Crowds were out in full swing this weekend for the first time in 2 years for the 2022 Terrace Bay Drag Festival, a 3-day gathering of all things high speed on the North Shore. Track director Mark Wijak says he was almost speechless when he looked around at the number of people in the stands and the pits.
It's exhilarating. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just beautiful. It almost makes like things are getting back to normal.
Racer Doug Belanger says seeing fans in the stands once again reinvigorated life into the track, which he's been racing on for the last 20 years.
It's been a great event here. Like, I've been out here since 2000. It started in, I believe, 98, but I've been out here since 2000, participating since 2002. Had a slower car up until 2010, and then I've had the car that just crashed at 2010 until now.
Yes, you heard correctly, crashed. Belanger was involved in the crash near the finish line shortly before 2 o'clock Saturday, which caused the races to be put on hold. Fortunately, Belanger walked away thanks to his car's roll cage and the fact some young poplars helped cushion the crash. First responders made up of both the Terrace Bay and Scriber fire services were on scene within seconds and met Belanger, who was able to exit the vehicle. Unfortunately, it looks like his 12-year-old ride is a total loss.
That's the first crash. I've been racing for over 20 years, and the first crash I've had. Hope that maybe I got some motor and transmission salvageable out of there. But yeah, I don't know. I'd like to rebuild and get back in it as soon as I can. Just you fall off the horse, get back on and ride again.
Crashes are always a possibility when vehicles hit high speeds. Race officials say on Friday, one car was clocked at almost 200 miles per hour, which is why the Terrace Bay Drag Fest has stringent rules and, as mentioned, collaborates with first responders.
We have people that are top-notch, top of the line, and they're ready for incidences like we had, and we don't like these incidences, but I'm just so happy that Doug is fine and he's not hurt. His car is a little bit.
In addition to the cash prizes won by racers during the Gamblers Run, Dragfest prides itself on giving back to organizations in the region. On some occasions, more than $10,000 have been given out following the festival. Wijak says he is unsure as to how much will go out this year, especially considering they had more racers and fans than they expected. Adam Riley, TBT Sports.
In the lead up to Monday's speech from the throne, marking the beginning of Ontario's 43rd Parliament, Thunder Bay's new MPPs have a strong sense of their priorities at Queen's Park. For PC member Kevin Holland, it's the economy and mental health and addictions, and affordable housing tops the list for NDP's Lise Vougeois.
Housing in the region is, it's an issue everywhere, whether you're talking Scriber or or White Sand or Thunder Bay. The housing is a problem, and it's a problem even to the extent that they can't always bring in professionals because there's nowhere to put them up. So we'll be looking at that. We'll certainly be looking very closely at the budget, which the throne speech comes. So the throne speech and the budget are the big pieces in the first week.
We're coming off some pretty tough financial challenges that the province is facing, and in order to sustain our healthy communities, we have to have a strong, vibrant economy. But to have that strong economy, we need to have healthy communities. So it's really working on addressing some of the concerns, particularly around mental health and addictions in Thunder Bay, and as well as opportunities related to the critical mineral strategy, connecting the resources of the north to the auto sector in the south.
Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.